Hey guys, what's up? Kartaga here, and today I'm here with another Digimon deck profile. This time around, we'll be doing a deck profile on the purple deck. So this deck is a lot of fun. I know there's a lot of builds, a lot of different builds there. There's like a Rush purple build, there's like a full-on control Beelzemon Turbo build. This build, it's more of a balanced build, and that sounds like, oh, you're not getting the best of either worlds. But I think this deck has its pros, which is it works on your opponent. So if they kind of push you really hard, you can push back even harder. If they're trying to take it slow and try to cock block your memory, you can kind of play at their game and kind of cock block their memory too. It's a very, very interesting deck, and I'll explain more of the cards once we get into the profile. So let's start off with the level 6 first. So we're running 2 Beelzemons. Now Beelzemon this is not a Beelzemon Turbo deck, and I do notice there's a lot of problems with the Beelzemon Turbo build, and so we're only running 2 Beelzemons in this deck. Beelzemon is kind of used for your turn-ending plays, just to end. You have a Beelzemon on the field, you just play this afterwards, and pass your opponent's turn. Then that way you can pop one of your opponent's level 4 belows and disrupt their plays. And if you have nothing to do on your turn, you can just use this to pop their blockers. So that's pretty good. Assuming they're using level 4 blockers. But anyway. Next, we're actually running the main star, level 6 of this deck is actually Venomiotismon. Now this card is actually really, really good because it is a 3 cost to evolve. So unlike Beelzemon, which is 4 cost, this deck doesn't really have anything that can help you gain memories. So we're using this as the main level 6 beater, and when he dies, you can summon another level 4 or lower Digimon to the field. So most of the time, you're going to either summon a Venomon to start up a chain again, or you can summon a blocker if you think you're in danger next turn. So it's very, very good. And if he doesn't die, that's fine. You have another card in the field. If they choose to attack into this, you can call a blocker to the field and then use it to block on that same turn. If they don't attack into this, you can just use it to attack your opponent again next turn. So this is a threat on the board all the time. So it's very, very nice. Next, we are running 2 Paimons. So Paimon is here as kind of like a life-saving card. On play, you get to summon 2 level 4 or lower Digimons, and since when you play this, it's pretty much the end of the turn. You can use them to stall. You can call 2 blockers out, assuming you're not playing against Omegamon, or you can call a blocker and a Devimon out, so you can have like a more offensive option and a more defensive option at the same time. So Paimon is basically just a very, very flexible card. Next, we are running 2 Millenniumons. So this is mainly here for removal. He serves the same purpose as Trump Sword, and I'm running 2/2, so 2 Millenniumons, 2 Trump Swords, mainly because Trump Sword is not too great on your own turn. It's great as a defensive card, but I think if you draw into it, it's kind of dead sometimes, or a lot of times actually. So I like having a body in addition to the removal. So I'm running Millenniumon instead. And if your opponent's attacking with anything except for a Omegamon unboosted, they're probably going to crash anyway, so it kind of serves the same purpose as a Trump Sword. But of course, if they are playing decks that can pump up their numbers, like Featuremon or Wargreymon decks, then you might still be in a bit of a problem. But I think for the most part, he is kind of worth it for the payoff. So next, we are playing 4 Chimeramon. This card puts in a lot of work. A very, very good disruption card, and also puts the level 5 body on the board. So a lot of times you're going to use this to pop your opponent's level 5s. So if they're setting up for Omegamon, they're setting up for a Featuremon, setting up for a Shining Greymon, anything, as long as they're setting up a card, you can just place this, and then just pop their setup. And they're like, oh, there goes my turn worth of efforts. Because a lot of times, unless they're really lucky and they have all their vanillas, they won't be able to go from level 4 to level 6 in one turn. It does happen, but if they don't, that's when you can use this opportunity to disrupt their play. Next, we're running 3 Myotismon. So this card is just mainly here as an intermediary, so you can go into your Venom Myotismon if need be. He is a 6 cost to drop, so if you start at 3 on your turn and you have literally nothing to do, you can just drop this and go past to 3 on your opponent, and then you can set up for Venom Myotismon next turn. But obviously, the ideal play is to evolve this on top of Digimon, so that you can be a 7k body with Vengeance, which is a lot more scary than a 4k body with Vengeance, but you know, Vengeance is very scary in general, which is why we're running 4 Digimons. So Digimon, he's easily one of the best cards in the deck. You can use this card to remove a lot of cards. For example, if your opponent has Omegamon on the field, you can just evolve this on top of something of your level 3 and just crash into the Omegamon, and bye-bye Omegamon. And it's a very, very good deal on your part. But of course, in that case, you will have lost a card too. So if you want some hard removals, you have your Millenniumons and Trump Swords. But Digimon is a very, very good card in general, especially if you keep cheesing people with your Digimons and they want to stop you. They're going to have to sacrifice a Digimon in order to do so. But he does have a low base power, which is why we are using it in conjunction with Myotismon. So you do have a little bit of a beefier body, so you can probably get through more security checks. And you know, if you do get him into Venom Myotismon, then that's the best situation to be into. Because when he dies and you have this as evolution source, they're gonna have to lose 1 Digimon too, but then you still get this back, so you can continue your onslaught of evilness. Next, we are running for Evilmon. Nice transition there. And basically, he's just a blocker. He's going to be used a lot for target for revivals, so that's very, very good. Next, for the level 3s, we are going to be running 4 Impmon. Impmon is you're going to use this early game to rush your opponent, keep crashing him, so you can pile up your trash, so you can have more options for your Yamato plays, your Paimon plays, and your Grizzly Wing plays. Very, very good card. And of course, he is also a evolution base for Beelzemon when you do get the 10 cards in the trash. Next, we're running 3 Gabumon. We're only running 3 because we don't actually run that many level 4s. So, yeah, I think running 3 is enough. Before, I had a lot of... I was running Gabumon at 4, and I keep drawing to him, but I have no... I can only utilize like 1 or 2 of them at a time. So, I think running 3 is enough. And if you really do need it, you can just revive it with Grizzly Wing or something. So, it's pretty good. Next, we're running 4 Demi-Devimons. This is the vanilla version. You can run the level 3 mill version if you want, or not level 3. The 3 cost on mill when played version. But I think that card doesn't synergize that well with the rest of the deck, since a lot of the cards that are on plays effects are negated, and sometimes playing a hard play 3 cost monster on the board, it's kind of not that great. So instead, I opt to run 4 of the vanilla Demi-Devimons instead. I was running 2-2 before, but I realized that 90% of the time I won't be using the other Digimon. So there's that. I'd much rather use Hakumon, which is Bakumon, which is when it's deleted, you can just draw 1, which is pretty good. You're just going to use this to cheese your opponent, and if it dies, you draw 1, it's fine. So it's a very, very good card. And if you use a pop it with Chimeramon, you can also draw 1, so you're not really losing anything. You are losing a body on the board, but I think it's worth it sometimes. Next, we are running for Grizzly Wing. Grizzly Wing is super good. It's a 2 cost to summon a card from your trash. So this is a very, very good utility card, since you are getting an extra memory benefit from playing this card. And if your opponent crashes into this on on their turn, you get a level 3 to use on your turn. So you can either crash into it or set up for other plays. So overall, Grizzly Wing is a must play at 4, I believe. Next, we're running 2 Heat Vipers. So Heat Viper is a card I'm experimenting with right now, and I see some top decks in Japan are also running this card. Now this card, it's some people might, oh, why don't you just run Trump Sword instead? 4 Trump Sword is pretty good, but I think this card is very good because if your opponent is setting up their field with blockers, you can just play this and just delete 2 of their blockers, and you do have to pop one of your own units instead. But if you pop a Bagumon or a Impmon or something, you can still benefit from it. So I think it's pretty good. Main downside is that his security effect is just returning it to your hand. Sometimes it's not bad though, because if you have nothing to pop in your opponent's field, then giving you an option to use this later is also pretty nice. Next, we are running 2 Trump Swords. So Trump Sword is a pretty good card. It's a 7 cost to pop something active on your opponent's field. Downside to this is it's not as strong as Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is, the ultimate removal card in the game so far, and this card is almost at that level, but it has to be something active. And the upside of this card is it's 7 cost, so it's 1 memory less than Gaia Force. But again, it's really good if your opponent is playing Omegamon and they attack into this while they are still active. But on their second attack, if they crash into this and they have nothing on the board, well, this card is just vanilla, right? So it's not that great, which is why I cut this down from 4 to 2. If you're in a meta that's super heavy Omegamon everywhere, you might want to bump this back up to 4. But in Hong Kong, the meta is kind of balanced. Everybody's experimenting with all sorts of decks. So I feel like having the Heat Viper for the block removal is pretty good. And even if they're not having blockers on the field, you can use this to remove their level 4s, so they can potentially not set up for their player next turn. So not bad. Next, we are running 3 Yamatos. 3, I think, is the best number for this particular build. Running 4, you might have a lot of dead Yamatos in your hand, which is not nice. Obviously the toolboxing is very, very good, but a lot of times, since this deck has so much draw power from your Gabumons and Hagumons, I think you will draw enough that you don't need a toolbox that much. You're going to need toolbox, so you're going to have to run this, but I think you draw enough that you don't need to have 4. And I think we're running enough copies of each card that you will probably see it at least once per game. So yeah, maybe not the 2-offs. Actually, no, the 2-offs I probably see quite often. Even if they go into even if they were stuck in my security and they go into trash, you can still pick it back up with these. So it's perfectly fine. So let's talk about the alternatives. So I was experimenting with Metal Garurumon, and basically the Garurumon lineup. This lineup is pretty good, but I think it's more reliant on evolving, and it doesn't really hold up that well against Omegamon builds that can turbo you to death. If you're playing in a meta with less Omegamons, I think this is pretty viable. And I was playing a day with this build that didn't really have much Omegamons in it, and I think it did pretty well. It did pretty well because your Metal Garurumons always give you pluses whenever he attacks. So I think getting those rivals are good. Maybe I'll do a more traditional build for the deck later on for purple. It'll utilize more of the evolution chains, and it won't use Beelzemon, or it won't heavily use Beelzemon and some of the other cards here. I'll do that later, but for this particular build, you don't really need it. You can splash some of it in if you want, but I think the evolution cost for the 3 and the 3 kind of kills it a little bit. since the going up the full chain will cost quite a bit. So it's a little bit slow, but you can try it. I know some people like to run the Beelzemon from the promo pack in the deck instead of running vanillas, or they'll do a mix match of both and not run Chimeramons. I think Chimeramon is kind of a must. Was not really must, I guess, but I think you should run at least some Chimeramons just so you can have that removal. But yeah, this card is good too because if you don't get your Digimon, for example, if you have the Evilmon instead, you can still give your Beelzemon Vengeance. So it's alright. Most of the time, if I don't have my Digimon as a base though, I usually won't evolve, so that's the reason why I'm not running this. And I noticed some people run the Wizardmon and the Digimon. So Wizardmon is pretty good. It's a 4 cost on play, and even if you're not playing any yellows in your deck, he's whenever he dies you draw one, so it kind of serves the same purpose as Bakumon. But I think it's okay. I think being a 4 cost on play is pretty good, so you can advance onto the level 6 faster. But in this build, I don't really like that much. I did try it before too. I tried all these cards. I tried to experiment the build. So right now with this particular, I feel like I'm the most comfortable with this ratio. I might change it a bit. I always tweak the ratios every now and then whenever I play enough games and feel like, oh, maybe I should try bumping this down 1 or bumping this up 1. And yeah, as mentioned before, Digimon is a nice alternative if you don't want to run the vanilla one. I think you should always run at least 2 of the vanilla ones and then maybe 2 of these if you want to try it out. But if you end up like me, you notice that playing this is usually not worth it for the mill. You'd rather have another level 3 on the board instead for a 3 cost. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this this deck profile. I hope I explained things clearly enough. If you guys have any recommendations or suggestions, let me know. And yeah, I will definitely be making more DigiCard 101s next week. I'll be doing a recommended deck ratio. Obviously, this deck is a very, very bad example because this doesn't run a regular deck ratio, and that's mainly because this deck is less reliant on getting a regular chain up, since Beelzemon can just outright skip it, and the only Digimon here that really needs the chain here is Beelzemon. So that's why this build is kind of wonky. Why we're only running 2 types of level 4s, so 8 in total, and why we're only running 7 level 5s. These are hard. This card is hard play, so you can hard cast, I guess you would call it. So you can just skip everything and just play this, pop one of your opponent's monster, and then on your turn you can just play this up. You won't have Vengeance, but you can still use this to attack, and if it does die, you can just play the Digimon. Anyway, I think I've rambled on for long enough for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more Digimon content, and this is Karataku. I'll see you guys next time.